Hello everyone. So let's continue from where we left in the last one. One thing I want to tell you is when you are writing a repository, it's as annotated as a repository. So simply you have to say at repository. Um, that means the Spring will understand. Okay, the staff repository is a repository. That means a database layer, and as we know, it extends JPA repository. Where the table is staff and the key or primary key will be an integer, that is our staff id for us. And since the JPA repository is being extended by our staff repository integer, there is an implementation, inbuilt implementation for this repository, some basic methods such as inserting a data into the database, deleting a particular data using that primary key, or updating a particular data, things like that. So you don't have to manually write those basic queries unless you need an explicit query that is a customized query. So now let's see how we can use this particular repository into our code so that we can basically update our database. So now if I go to the database and see the table, staff table, if there is any data, I can see there is no data there, right? So the data that the table is basically empty. There is no data inside the table. So what I will do is I will, as we all know, this repository layer should come after a service layer. So we start from the controller layer and we go to service, and the service should call the repository layer and update the database basically. So what I will do is I'm going to use the repository layer in the service layer. So what I will do is I will go to my service class and I need to create the repository object and call the respective method for let's say for each and every scenarios, like adding, updating and deleting. So first let's think about adding a data to this scenario, to this staff table from our endpoint. So for the moment, what happens is when you're adding a new staff, it is updating our staff array, right? Staffs array. That's what happening. So now what I want to do is in this particular thread or in this particular code flow, I want to update in a way that when you're adding a staff to from our endpoint, it should update the data. It should add a new staff data into my table, staff table. Instead of this list, I need to add it to my staff table. Why I want to do this is if I add it into the staff table, it will be here forever. It will not be deleted. If I add it into the list, it will be temporary, and when I restart the application, it will be gone, right? So what I will do is I will have to, so if I want to add it into the staffs table, I need the repository layer, right? So what I have to do is I have to create the connect the repository class to this staff service class. So for that, what I have to do is I have to create a new repository object, and I simply have to call a method, an inbuilt method to insert or to add a new staff data to or new staff data row to the existing table, right? So how we can do it is normally when we create a new object like this, but in Spring injection. So let's not dive into this topic now because this is a separate topic. We will learn about it later. So for now, just see how this can be done. So instead of creating new repository object, because repository itself is an interface, right? So you can't create a new object without giving implementation of the interface, right? So what we have to basically do is we have to do something called dependency. So let's just see what I'm doing so that you will try to catch up. Okay, so first what I will do is I will declare a new variable, let's say private new staff service, and I will this particular variable, okay. So I will say staff repository. So I will say this dot staff repository. So you know these things is equal to staff repository. That means the one I am passing here. And also I should annotate it with an annotation at AutoWired. Okay, so now you know two new things. One is an annotation called AutoWired, and the other and another thing called what do you call dependency injection. So here what actually happens is, this may be a little confusing, but basically what actually happens is the Spring it will find because we know this staff repository is an extension of JPA repository, and there are inbuilt implementations for this JPA repository. So when you extend the staff repository from the JPA repository, and when you say okay at AutoWord, and when you write this particular class constructor, and you are passing a new staff repository here, staff repository object or staff repository reference here, and you are saying AutoWord, and you are assigning that staff repository to this staff repository, right? So that is what you are doing in the line number 18. When you are doing it, what Spring will do is, Spring will find an implementation of the staff repository, that is an inbuilt implementation. Spring will find it, and it will assign it to this staff repository object. So there is something called beans, and Spring will find the respective bean and assign it to staff repository. Those things you don't need now. But only one thing, just remember what I said is Spring will automatically find it from its inbuilt implementation and assign it to our staff repository. So this scenario is kind of called so this is implemented by also this at AutoWord also is important here. So this scenario is let's say implemented by at AutoWord as well. So when you mention at AutoWord, it makes it easy to Spring to do this implementation. So what I said, the functionality. So basically your staff repository will be created and ready to be used by the staff service. Okay, so this is how we implement or we achieve dependency injection. But now don't get much into this, just know this is how you have to do it. Okay, so there's another problem. What it is we have to do the same to the staff service as well. Okay, so why we have to do it is I will tell you in the next video.